I'm good.
Okay, now, how do I put this on Facebook? Where are my options? Oh, because you're the fucking host, Julian.
What do I have to do now? What do I have to do?
You have to make me the host.
Okay, so I'll make you the host.
Make me host.
There you go. All right.
There it is. Perfect. God, I love technology. All right, so here we go. No more cussing. I gotta stop cussing. Somebody has to help me. Who's good at that? Daphne, help me stop cussing.
Just because I'm Catholic.
Exactly. Exactly. So if everybody could also open up their Facebook browser and just in the background mute it, but also have it up. So let's see. There is everybody. All right.
What do you mean by that?
Facebook Live. Get to know the team that's going to take back.
Wait, what do you mean have the Facebook browser up? Like
if you're on your computer, just go to facebook.com just so it's like on your newsfeed.
Oh, okay.
All right, here we go. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, let's see how this works. This is our first one. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody.
We're live on Facebook, apparently. We're good.
You're live. That's good. Hope you got all your F-bombs out. Oh, now that's going to be on Facebook. Darn it. Hello, everyone. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alex Barrio, Team Barrio Facebook Live event. There we are. So I'm here with my team. Let me just watch this video. Are we unmuted? Oh, God. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Team Barrio Facebook Live event where we're going to get to know the team that is going to help take back HC43. I'm very excited to have everybody get to know everybody that's here. Y'all know me, I'm Alex Barrio. I'm Democrat running for Florida House District 43. And now it's time to get to know all the people that are going to help win this election. We'll also be taking your questions as you have them on Facebook Live, and please make sure to share. So we will start with Daphne. Let everybody know who you are. You're on mute, by the way. To help take back HC43.
Okay. Hi, I'm Daphne Fernandez. I'm from Polk County, Florida, and I recently graduated from the University of Florida with double majors in both political science and sociology, and I got involved in politics about a year and a half ago when I went up to Tallahassee as a part of the Bob Graham Center Tallahassee internship program, and I interned with Senator Lori Berman. I've also worked on a project for Representative Amy Mercado, and now I'm working on this campaign, and I'm very excited for everything that's to come.
Thank you, Daphne. Glad to have you on board. Antoine.
Sure. Hey, everyone. So my name is Antoine. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I just recently graduated from the University of Central Florida with my bachelor's degree in political science. In this past session, I actually got to intern in the Capitol as part of UCF Legislative Scholars Program. I guess I got interested in politics back in 2012 around the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. For me personally, it really opened my eyes to a lot of the racial and social inequality in America. And then in 2016, my cat's here too, I guess. I got involved in Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, and it really just made me a lot more aware of the economic inequality in our country as well, and the need for progressive political reform, and that's pretty much sparked my desire to get involved.
Awesome. Molly?
Hi, all. My name is Molly. I am currently a senior at the University of Central Florida studying health sciences. I was previously in UCF student government as part of the judicial branch. I did start seeing the politics to it, and then obviously with the coronavirus now, with bills being passed, kind of opened my eyes to like how much change this country needs. So I'm really happy to be on this campaign and kind of see versus like the medicine side that I usually see. Now I can kind of see the political side behind the decisions our government makes.
Awesome. Julian?
Hi everyone, my name is Julian. I'm a former Valencia student and I'm transferring to UCF now. The reason why I got involved in politics is because I'm just really passionate about education reform and the fact that education needs to be accessible to everyone. And I think that Alex is just the right candidate to do that. And I've loved working with him for about the past year.
Awesome. Thank you. David?
Hello, everyone. My name is David. I'm studying political science and international relations at Florida State University. I also worked in the Capitol last session with Antoine and with Representative Rodriguez, Miami-Dade County. And I got into politics pretty young. My family's been involved, state representative level. My dad's very aware of politics, and I just felt like being involved in politics is the one change that is the one thing that you can change and help people. And my main focus is to help prison reform and criminal justice reform, because I feel like in Florida especially, there's a lot of injustices and things that need to work out, especially with people of color.
Thank you. Joey, our newest intern, just came on last week.
Yep. How's it going, everyone? Good afternoon. My name is Joey. I am a junior at the University of Central Florida. I'm currently a double major in economics and political science. I also serve on the executive cabinet for student government. And I've personally really got into politics when I got into college and gradually over the years. I'm super invested. I'm always reading different articles, watching. I have so many different political podcasts, and during that time, it's just made me realize how broken our political system is. And if you really want to make a difference, it comes down to the younger generation. It comes down to taking action yourself. And so that's why I really going forward want to be a part of making that difference, making that change. And so, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm very proud and very happy to have you on board. Have a young team. I got my start in politics really, I was a canvasser for John Kerry when I was 19, but then when I was 20, I started working with Scott Xander Randolph and on Scott Randolph's first state house race, and I always appreciate Scott and Xander Randolph. Shout out to our tax collector, Scott Randolph. Xander Randolph was with Sierra Club, who really gave me a start and put their faith in me. And then Scott hired me to be his first district secretary right after he won, even though I hadn't even graduated college yet. They really believed in me and they really gave me a chance, and they taught me, a lot about campaigns and about politics, about field and how to work campaigns. And I'm glad I've had a lot of really good interns over the years as I've worked on and managed different campaigns. One of them, in 2014, Alexandria Ayala is now running for school board in Palm Beach County. Sol Ortega, who was in the UF program that Daphne was in, she now works for Chuck Schumer in DC. So a lot of them have gone on to do some really cool stuff, and I'm really happy, proud of that. Another one, Jennifer, she's just graduating from Duke Law now. And she's going to be an amazing lawyer. So really excited to see what becomes of you all in the next few years. Hopefully none of you will run for office. It's very exhausting. So I'm so tired. I'm just kidding. I love it. So we're going to start now with, now that we know who all is here, a little bit of questions and some issue discussion. People are going to talk about basically the issue that's most important to them, like why is that issue so important to you? And then, just ask me tell me what you would like to see, or ask me what you think I should do if I win my election. We're going to start with Julian. He has to hop off in about 20 minutes for another meeting because he's a very important person at Valencia. and we will, and then we'll go around. So Julian, what's up?
All right, so thank you very much, first of all, for doing this. I really, I don't think I've ever seen any other candidates do something like this with young people who are progressive and who really care about the issues. I think this is exactly what we need to be doing, having these discussions, especially on Facebook, where they're really accessible to everyone. And then apart from that, I think the reason why my most important issue is education is because I've seen firsthand what a lack of access to education does to someone's life. You know, it can be very difficult if you want to get if you just want to become a better human, right? And you want to do it through the means that is education. Although that's not the means for everyone, I think that having the access that and we've spoken about Valencia as an example, having access to low cost, high value education is so incredibly important. And it's really good that progressive candidates like Alex are doing the work to make sure that college and universities are accessible. So my question to you, Alex, is what are you doing to make sure that people like us, young people, and then people who want to go back to college can do to make sure that they can do it, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm a big supporter of universal free college education. I think all education should be free. People should be able to go to classes as needed. You know, there's a lot of criticism of that where it's like, well, so people can just go to school whenever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there still has to be acceptance, right? Like, not everybody's just going to go to Harvard. You know, Harvard is still going to have its own standards of only accepting the children of rich people. That's still, it's a legacy thing that we can't necessarily overcome. But in terms of community college, law school, graduate school, like education should be free, you know? And so as somebody who has a lot of student debt, and I'll be honest with you, when I graduated law school, my student debt was $140,000. Because half of my loans, which are federal student loans, not private, government loans, the interest rate is 7.9%. Even though I have paid thousands of dollars towards my loan, it has grown to over $200,000. So for those of you who want to go to law school, just know that the interest rate is real. Compound interest is not a joke. And it's frustrating because it just feels like I'm just paying this money into a bottomless pit that doesn't matter. And the system is set up like that, to where you have people who literally spend 30 years paying triple of what their actual education costs, just so that the government can make money off of your debt, which is an insane premise. Like, it shouldn't be that way. So I believe, so as a state legislator, one of the things that I will definitely push is reducing, if not eliminating, all tuition costs. There has been talk about making community college free, about making certain degrees free, for example, nursing, where we have severe shortages, education. I will support all that, but I will also support like expanding it, you know, and backwards too. Like we have voluntary pre-K right now, but we should have free universal childcare. Childcare is one of the most expensive costs for families nowadays, if you can even get into a daycare program, which are themselves very, very competitive, because the government has basically let it run amok. Like, it's a total Wild West. And so pushing at least for community college to be free, or at least, you know, much, much more affordable, university education, pushing to reduce tuition costs. It used to be in the 90s. So before the 90s, it used to be that people could go to college and you would hear about like your parents or your grandparents, you know, they went to like universities and they were paying like, you know, $25 per credit hour to get a degree. And they graduated without debt, working full time. And they say, well, why can't you do that? And the reason is because the people who did that, as soon as they got elected to office in the 90s and the early 2000s, they began cutting funds to university programs, funds to colleges, especially in Florida, to the point where prior to 1998 is the year that Jeb Bush got elected governor. And it's important because it started the decline. Prior to 1998, 2/3 of a university's budget came from the state. So the state was funding every university at 2/3. By 2008, or by 2008, but also by this point, 2020, it is less than 1/3. The universities in that time, as you know, especially I graduated UCF in 2007, so to see it from where it was in 2007 to now, I've seen the growth. You know, they've grown, and where has that growth been paid for? It's been paid for by dramatic increases in tuition and the shift from the government and the taxpayer onto the backs of students and tuition. And I want to reverse that. We need to reverse that. We need to fund our universities at a higher level in order to bring tuition down. And if it takes some time, then let's make that time, but it should get down to 0 so that everybody could have access financially to get to universities. So thank you, Julian. Molly, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
We're here.
So obviously, as a pre-med major, my concern is how prescriptions, for example, are getting very expensive. Doctors' costs are getting example. The U.S. is one of the, I'm pretty sure, is the country with the highest amount of individuals who go bankrupt per year. So what exactly would you want to do concerning health costs and lowering deductibles?
So thank you for that. Medical bankruptcy, just to start, is a truly American phenomenon. Other countries have universal healthcare systems to where if you get sick, you go to the hospital, you go to your doctor, you're taken care of. You're able to see the doctors that you need to see, and it's all paid for through taxes. In the United States, and those are single payer systems, or in Britain, they have socialized medicine where basically the National Health Service is a branch of the government, like the military, or like the VA. The Veterans Administration here in the United States is a socialized medicine system. All the doctors work for the government, and all the hospitals are government hospitals. So America, for the most part, outside of the VA, which is fully socialized, or the Medicare, which is a single payer system, we have a private system. And single payer means that the provider bills the government, and the government pays the bill, whatever it is, and they negotiate rates. But it's all paid for through our Medicare taxes. Like we all, even though we're not on Medicare, we all pay Medicare taxes for our grandparents. They have to be over 65 to get on Medicare. So everybody else, people who are not veterans in the VA system or people who are under 65, are in the private healthcare system. For me and what I have seen, the biggest driver of costs is the health insurance industry. This is why I do support Medicare for all, and I support transitioning to a single payer system. The health insurance industry stacks inefficiencies into the health insurance system. Under a normal system like Canada, which has a single payer system, which is like Medicare for all, basically the government just bills, the doctor bills the government, and the government has set rates, right? They know how much everything costs, so they have rates and they reimburse for those rates. Under our system, there's literally thousands of health insurance companies, tens of thousands, if not, no, millions, literally millions of providers. You're talking about doctor's offices, hospitals, clinics, walk-in clinics, you know, the CVS, Minute Clinic, etc. Like all those providers. Insurance companies negotiate directly with providers on different rates. And so all the prices are totally different. And doctors could be billing a cash price. You come in uninsured and you're like, oh, I need this procedure. I need an MRI. And they're like, okay, the MRI, well, the cost is $300 for us, so we'll just charge you $300. They have negotiated with Medicare for $325 to pay for that MRI. With Medicaid, which is emergency health insurance for the poorest people, they've negotiated a 90% rate, so they get reimbursed $270 for that MRI. With the insurance company, some insurance companies will pay $350. Some insurance companies will reimburse them for $1,000. So these hospitals are getting money from different insurance companies based on their rates. And then certain insurance companies only negotiate with certain hospitals. So if you go out of network, the insurance company doesn't cover you. And this was a story a few years ago. The Speaker of the House, Richard Corcoran, and so you can look this up, it's crazy. He was in Tallahassee during session and his wife went into labor at a hospital that was out of network in Tallahassee. They're from Pasco County. Okay? He got a $30,000 bill. And he was freaking out. And it's like, yeah, this is what we've been saying for years. This is also the person who has single-handedly blocked Medicaid expansion in the state of Florida. Despite this, and when this happened, I was a legislative analyst, and I was working for SEIU. I was working for SEIU and lobbying for Medicaid expansion in 2016. We were hopeful that he would actually do something about this, but as a Republican, he did not. Instead, he passed legislation that basically made it so, like, if you're out of network, they can't, like, surprise bill you. Like, they have to tell you that you're out of network before you go into labor. So you could drive, presumably 100 miles, or however far it is, to a hospital that's in network. So I say all that to say the reason Medicare and healthcare prices are so high is because of all these inefficiencies built into the healthcare system. What we can do in Florida, number one, is pass Medicaid expansion so that we get nearly 1 million people who are working but uninsured to get health insurance. That will lower the costs because when you have insurance and there are fewer people uninsured, hospitals and doctors' offices make more money essentially, and they don't have to worry about writing things off. If someone uninsured goes to an ER, the hospital has to write them off. Like they're not going to get reimbursed. So they'll get reimbursed very little for emergency Medicaid. And so the people who have money get charged more to compensate for that. So if we pass Medicaid expansion, get people more insurance, less people uninsured, we'll be able to help people. And that will lower prices. Number two, we need prescription drug controls. Every other country in the world does it. Ron DeSantis, I mean, he had this crazy plan in 2019 that America, to lower drug prices in Florida, we would import Canadian drugs. But it's not importation, it's re-importation. The drugs are manufactured in the United States. Canada buys them at a lower rate. And Canada has price control, so they buy at a rate that they want. Then Ron DeSantis was going to have the state of Florida buy those Canadian drugs back at a markup through which the Canadian drug purchasers and wholesalers would make money. So essentially, if insulin costs $10 to make, and Canada's buying it at $15 a bottle, Florida, instead of instituting price controls to just buy it at the same price as Canada, would pay the Canadian markup to buy it and bring it to Florida. Because price controls are bad or socialist or whatever, Republicans don't like them. So they're going to waste extra money instead of doing what is right, which is a simple policy of saying this is how much things should cost and this is how much we're going to pay. So Medicaid expansion, price controls for drugs, like every other country in the world does it. It's not going to hurt the profit margins of these pharmaceuticals. It's not going to hurt their research. Most medical research for new drugs is already government funded through the National Institutes of Health and different research programs through the government and university programs. It cuts into the bottom line of their shareholders, but those shareholders are already making a ton of money off of literally killing people. People literally dying because they can't get their life-saving medication. So it's a fight that I'm looking forward to. I think there's an appetite to do something because people are struggling, but you know, it's going to be hard. It's going to be an uphill battle. but I hope at least, we get to the point where we can have Medicaid expansion and drug controls, price controls. So, thank you. Sorry if that was a lot. I feel like I just rambled on. Sorry. But anyways, thank you. Antoine?
Okay. So I guess issue that's kind of become a lot more important to me over time has been wealth and income inequality. Florida is among one of the states with the highest income inequality. And obviously we already live in a system where the top 10% of Americans own 80 to 90% of all the wealth in America. And that's not even taking into account, the racial wealth gap or the gender pay gap, or the Americans that are still making billions of dollars during a pandemic, while millions of Floridians are struggling to even navigate a broken unemployment system. So I guess my question is for you, in a Republican-dominated legislature in the state of Florida, how do you still push the needle towards a sort of progressive economic reform that we need as far as addressing rising income inequality and slow growth and living standards of low and moderate income Americans?
All right. So thank you. It's a really good question. And there's a lot that can be said about that, right? Like the ultimate root of income inequality is set by government policy that began in the 80s of dramatically reducing tax rates at the top while keeping them at the same or increasing them for lower and middle income people. There used to be, and there was a 90% tax rate. If you were the top 0.01% and you made a certain amount of money, after a certain point, that income was taxed at 90%. Unless you kept the income in your company and reinvested in your company. So if you took it for yourself, you get a penalty. But if you actually use that money to give pay raises to your employees, to give them healthcare benefits, to raise living standards, to expand your company, you wouldn't have to pay that tax. Now everything is reversed to where taxes, the more money you make, the lower tax you pay, to the point where Jeff Bezos, who by 2026, I read today, will be the world's first trillionaire, be worth $1 trillion, will by then, pay $0 in taxes. Amazon pays $0 in taxes because they have so many tax loopholes and the rates are so low. Anyway, and it's insane to think of one person having $1 trillion. The entire United States GDP before this crisis, right? Let's say January 1st, 2020. The value of the United States was itself $100 trillion. So just think one person owning 1% of all the money in our entire country. It's insane. It's insane. And I hope it doesn't come true. But that's a lot of federal policy. At the state, one of the things that we need to do is stop giving corporate income tax refunds. In 2017, they passed a tax cut for the wealthy and corporations in DC. The state government immediately used that. Basically, there's this complicated formula related to like corporate income tax payments paid in DC and then based in a state, something. So they're ridiculous math, but ultimately what it leads to is over $500 million in tax refunds to the largest corporations in Florida. So every single year, these companies, this year was $543 million. Every single year, companies in Florida get this tax refund. It doesn't make sense. Not only just on a purely ideological standpoint of, the wealthiest companies shouldn't be getting tax dollars that we need for our schools, but also in the sense that at the end of the day, these are the largest companies in America and they're already getting a huge tax break from DC. Why do they need this here? And especially now when we're in an economic crisis in Florida, over 70% of the money in this state comes from sales taxes and tourist taxes. All that's gone, right? All that disappeared at the end of March, the entire month of April, these first 2 weeks of May. We have no tourists. We're not going to have tourists from other countries for at least a year. We're not going to have any from other parts of the country for at least a while. So that base is gone and we need to have that money. And so making sure, first of all, that corporate income tax money stays. Every year they pass a corporate income tax cut. The corporate income tax in Florida itself is very small, and it only affects a certain number of corporations, only the largest corporations. And so making sure that we don't do that again next year, don't pass a corporate income tax cut. And we also have to move towards a more progressive tax system. In Florida, under the state constitution, we cannot have a personal state income tax, which is what a lot of states do. But we do, however, have something that we used to have that Jeb Bush phased out in 2006 that we can restore, called the intangibles tax. The intangibles tax was a 5% tax on capital gains. And basically, it's a 5% tax on the money you make from investments. It's money that is literally sitting in a bank account on Wall Street, collecting, just growing. You know, it's Mitt Romney, who was worth $500 million. In 2012, he only paid 14.9% taxes, because the tax on capital gains at the federal level is 15%. It's a separate income tax. Because capital gains are not technically income, right? Income is money that you earn from work. Capital gains is money that you get from being rich and just get growing. It's investments. So bringing back that 5% tax on capital gains for all the people in Florida. There are a lot of Florida residents who have a lot of money in investments that could be contributing to Florida and to reducing and to increasing our budget. One of those is Donald Trump, who, as you know, is a resident of Florida and a voter. Even though vote by mail is fraud, he does vote by mail. So I guess he's right. And please register to vote by mail because it is the way that we can vote this year and win. So in that way, and then turning that money and investing it in reducing income inequality, you know, making sure that, first of all, we need to raise the wage. We, you know, there's a constitutional amendment on the ballot this year to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Please vote for it. Making sure that we're investing in affordable housing, making sure that we're investing in public transit, fully funding Lynx, fully funding Sunrail, Tri-Rail in South Florida, the Bright Line, making transit a real option for working class folks so that they don't have to sit in traffic, so that they don't lose hours of their time, so they don't lose parts of their life there. They don't have to spend money on gas, on car insurance. Like, there are different ways we can put money in people's pockets, and that's what we need to do. The only way we're going to reduce income inequality is if we go back to the policies, literally the 1950s. You know, Republicans always going to go back to the 1950s. Well, let's go back to the economic policies of the 1950s, where people were taxed at a fair rate, and we had a huge explosion in growth of the middle class. And we were investing in schools, we were investing in public transit, building roads, and really building this country up. So that's the way we're going to do it. And then access to education, making sure that every single person has access to a good school, from daycare all the way to graduate school, that they can go, they can learn, they can grow. If they want to start a business, they can do it. They want to work, they have those opportunities. And if they need to be retrained, they can get retrained as the economy changes. And that's the way we're going to reduce income inequality. It's not going to happen easily. You know, income inequality right now is as bad as it was during the 20s, right before the Depression. And now we're here. It got as bad as it got, and now we're in another depression. And it was years, literally 30 years from, you know, 1929 from when FDR became president in 32 to the 50s, where we really started to balance things out. You know, over 20 years, and there was a lot of legislative fights there to get that done. And so it's going to take some time, but that's how we do it. Take money from those who have it and use that money to invest in the future. So, Daphne, hi. All right, Julian, see you later.
Bye, y'all.
You're coming. I'm still the host, right? Okay, good. All right, so we also lost Molly, unfortunately. Bye, Molly. Daphne, how are you?
Good. Healthy, luckily. Okay, so my policy area where I'm most interested in is immigration policy. And yes, I acknowledge this is a federal issue, but there's a lot that is involved with having a vulnerable status, whether it be DACA, undocumented, TPS, whatever it is. And I personally, I'm never going to be able to completely relate, but I can empathize. My grandfather was an immigrant, undocumented, and he came, and he struggled a lot establishing his life in Polk County. And so I know a lot of the struggles that many undocumented people do face. And so my question for you is, how do you plan to advocate for these vulnerable communities in Tallahassee, considering the anti-immigrant legislation that has been implemented in recent years?
So yeah, it is a federal issue, but the state has definitely got involved in the wrong direction. They passed a bill a few years ago. When you were there, it was SB 168, right? SB 168 required local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law and basically act as President Trump's deportation force. So there are ways in which the state is acting and trying to enforce immigration law. Personally, I do not believe in the criminalization of immigration. I think there's a civil process that we used to have prior to the George W. Bush administration that we should return to, a civil process where people are essentially fined, but they do have a path to citizenship if they do come here without documentation, if they overstay their visa, a system where they can apply for asylum and refuge. My family's from Cuba, and Cubans are lucky. We were given a privileged status for years, which is wet foot, dry foot. If you landed in the States, you got asylum automatically. No one else has that around the world. And TPS, is temporary. And so as a state legislator, number one, making sure that our immigration enforcement is lawful and humane, right? That we're making sure that we are not punishing people, hunting people down. We're not allowing ICE to do raids. Just that we're not acting cruelly to people. Number two, there were detention centers where children were being kept. There was thought of building one in Orlando, and I was of two minds. On the one hand, children should not be held in detention centers, right? But if they are going to be held in detention centers, then we should maybe take that responsibility, because maybe we could treat them the way that they need to be treated, that they should be treated, as human children. They're literally on the borders in Texas, sleeping in tents, sleeping in cages, on floors, stacked on top of each other, not getting any food, not getting any medicine. We could have done better. We could have worked and actually built a place, in theory, that actually treated them like children, that created schools and dorms and hired social workers and healthcare professionals and teachers to actually help them. Like, immigration enforcement has to exist, right? The law is the law. Borders are borders. We have to deal with it. But it doesn't have to be this cruel game where we dehumanize immigrants. We can treat them just like we treat everybody else and just like we want to be treated. And so at the state level, making sure that all immigrants that are detained here are treated humanely and taken care of, and that we're not engaged in prejudicial, unjust, and just cruel behavior towards immigrants, and punishing. And also, we need to make sure that we are punishing any law enforcement or ICE agents who take it upon themselves to humiliate, torture, or attack undocumented people. Like, there has to be real law enforcement and consequences that other agents see, so they don't act that way again. That is the only way in which we will actually have, that is one of the ways in which people will start acting better. If people start seeing their colleagues getting punished for acting badly, they're going to stop acting badly. If they see their colleagues acting badly and getting away with it, one rotten apple spoils the bunch. That's how it works. You let one person get away with it, and then everybody gets away with it. And so in those ways, I believe the state can be a strong proponent of immigration and also accepting refugees. States, under the refugee resettlement policy at the federal level, can choose how many refugees they accept. we should accept as many as possible. There's a great refugee resettlement agency in Jacksonville that I visited when I was a district director for Congressman Soto. We should be accepting refugees, bringing them in, giving them a second chance from all over the world. Because being a refugee it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 years to actually get accepted as a refugee. And we in Florida have been a safe haven for refugees from Cuba, from Eastern Germany, or Eastern Europe after World War II, refugees from Haiti, refugees from Venezuela. We should continue to be a safe haven because those communities really lifted up the state and made it what it is. And so we should bring more people in. So, thank you. David, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hot. It's hot in my apartment.
Yeah. So my primary focus in politics is criminal justice reforms. And my number one goal with criminal justice reform is to solve issues with Florida's prison industrial complex regarding many of our inmates failing to receive adequate in-person rehabilitation programs. I've seen it time and time again. I have a friend, for instance, you serve your sentence and you get spit up out on the street and you have to try to find a job, but a lot of jobs and programs are not accepting you because you're a felon. But I believe in order to, and if you serve your sentence, I believe that it should be reduced, meaning we should not serve. So my question for you, Alex, is how do you plan to reform Florida's government to better support returning people from prison and help them not get cycled back into the prison system?
So thank you. Criminal justice reform is a very big issue for me, and I personally consider myself a prison abolitionist, which is this idea of prison as a last resort. Like, it's abolishing the idea of prison as a first resort. In the United States, and in particular in Florida, if somebody makes a mistake, if they have a mental health issue, if they're addicted to drugs and they're grappling with addiction, the first resort is throw them in jail. And if they're a minor, the first thing is there a way we can charge them as an adult? Put them out of the juvenile system. When I was in law school, I worked in the public defender's office in direct file, which is juveniles charged as adults. And I literally saw it every day in Miami-Dade County. Just kids, little kids, 12 years old, 13 years old, 90 pounds soaking wet, thrown into jail with grown men, with violent criminals, and traumatized forever. You can't take that back. And so my philosophy going into these issues is we need to first figure out when somebody is arrested, is there a way that we can keep them out of prison, and what are the alternative programs that we have available? You know, if someone breaks into a house, if they break into a car, if they commit property crime, are they someone who needs drug treatment? Are they someone who is homeless? You know, are they someone who essentially is dealing with a mental health crisis? Can we direct them into programs to keep them out of jail? There obviously are people that need to go to jail, right? People that are serious threats to their neighbors and their friends and children. Those are the people that should be in jail, people that are dangerous. But somebody who's grappling with drug addiction, who steals my car, and goes for a joyride, like, that's inconvenient for me, but I pay car insurance, and I don't think their life should be ruined forever because they made this mistake. And that's the mentality we have now, where if someone makes a mistake, they should just go to jail, and that's it, it's over, you know, forget it. And so at the state level, there's a number of ways in which we can give people second chances. Number one, fully investing in social workers through the Department of Children and Family and Elder Affairs. We have a huge shortage of social workers. Making sure that we have enough social workers in the Department of Corrections, intake professionals who can actually assess what this person needs when they get arrested. Reforming our law enforcement policies to, again, make sure that police officers, when they're dealing with people, that they're interacting with them in such a way that is meant to address the underlying issue, not just the crime at hand, not just the theft that they just witnessed, but actually, like, what why did this person commit this crime? And really investing in those communities and caring about their communities. So making sure that we have programs and that we're fully funding programs to help people get drug treatment, and fully funding programs to make sure that if somebody has mental health issues, that they can get the counseling that they need, and we can direct them to services to help them, job placement services. And on the reentry side, it's the same thing. A lot of people come out of prison and they cycle back in there because they're dealing with PTSD that's untreated. They can't even get the help that they need psychologically, mentally, and emotionally to move on and restart their life. It takes years. And if people come out of prison and they don't have a strong safety net through their family or a network of friends or a community, they will reoffend. They will slip back into the mistakes. And we see it constantly. They need support. And so with reentry programs, making sure that we're funding reentry programs that support people as they're transitioning out, not just for a week, not just for a month, not a halfway house for 6 weeks, but like for years, and really make an investment. Politics is all about choices. And in the state of Florida, we have one priority, which every year we have one constitutional mandate, which is every year pass a budget, $93 billion. Okay? The way you spend your money determines, shows your priorities. And if you're spending your money to pay for private prisons to take people per head, then you're losing, then you're losing the opportunity to, you're making a choice that says we're prioritizing putting people in prison, not helping make society safer by keeping people out of prison, which is what we need to do. We need to be looking at programs that make people safer, and that make society safer, and that give people second chances. And one of the simplest ways that has actually moved through the legislature, and I hope I get the opportunity to vote for it, is what's known as ban the box. On a local level, cities and counties have done it, but basically when you fill out an employment application, there's a little box that you check that says, are you or have you ever been convicted of a felony? Check the box. If so, it's a felony if you lie, and then you have to explain yourself. And it's very, very frustrating and discouraging, and it's a way that employers weed out otherwise qualified candidates. When you ban the box, you don't say, well, you can't ask them about that, because you can. But you do give them the opportunity to get an interview and to make their case and to really talk about how they've changed and grown, or really explain what happened in the situation. Like why did you get arrested for this felony and what really happened? And sometimes that's all somebody needs. They just need a chance to explain themselves. People make mistakes. Every single one of us, we are all extremely lucky, right? None of us has ever been arrested for the bad decisions that we have made. I'm assuming, right? No one's been arrested. But, well, actually, no, I have been arrested. I've been arrested. I was arrested when I was 14. I performed a prank, and it was not smart. It was very dumb of me, and ended up getting arrested. It sucked. And did community service, which is actually really nice. I worked at this after-school program with these middle school kids. But it was a mistake, and it didn't change me or haunt my life forever. Not everybody has that luck or that privilege or that opportunity, but everybody should. And so at the state level, number one, ban the box, and number two, make sure that we're prioritizing spending on programs, not just for reentry, but intervention programs, and in our schools. I'm going to close with the school to prison pipeline. I do not believe that children should be arrested, period. Last year, there was a couple 7-year-olds that got arrested, or maybe it was just one. But children, literally children getting arrested for fighting in school. I can't count the number of fights that I was in when I was in elementary and middle school. It happens. Kids are mean. They hit each other. And so when you have those situations, it should be handled in school. I don't think kids should be arrested, but it happens all the time. Kids get arrested. They get a record. They get put into the system. and then they have trouble getting out of it. Because once you're in the system, it's really, really hard to climb out. It puts you in a hole, and it just takes a long time to claw your way out of it. So making sure that children are not arrested, that we're banning the box, and investing in programs that actually help people and create alternatives to prison, drug treatment, mental health counseling, job placement, etc. So, thank you. All right, Joey, last question from the panel, and then we'll move on to audience questions if there are any. How's it going?
Pretty good. And yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. And so my question essentially, so I firmly believe that all the topics that we've discussed and other issues, so environment, immigration, criminal justice reform, all that, is kind of futile if you don't discuss the elephant in the room, which essentially is who is our congressional lawmakers, our so-called public servants actually serving? Who are they representing? And I think that there is a lot of interest groups and special, lobbyists that really kind of corrode the values that these individuals had, who they said they stood for, and what their platform was that got them elected. And once they get into office, all of that goes down the drain for their own personal benefit. So I really think that money politics and big special interest groups is a key issue and is essential and revolves around everything else. So my question, I guess, is from your personal experience as a legislative analyst and any other political experience, what do you think are some of the big issues, and what is your plan to try to combat this going forward if you get elected?
All right, thank you, Joey. So I'm going to focus explicitly on Florida, because there's a lot you can say at the federal level too, but there's different rules. So I'm going to focus on Florida. In Florida, there is an individual contribution limit of $1,000 per candidate per person. However, there are a lot of loopholes that we need to close. And that is essentially the loopholes of the political committees. Political committees can be created by literally anyone, and they can take unlimited amounts of money. You can make dozens of political committees and skirt all these campaign finance rules. For example, let's say I am a political committee, or let's say I am, what's an industry we don't like? Let's say I'm the private prison industry, because I hate them and I don't take their money. So let's say I'm the private prison industry, and I want to make sure that a certain legislator who supports me gets elected. So one thing I can do as a private prison company, Geo Group, let's say Geo can give $1,000 to the candidate. What else can they do? They can create a political committee, and that political committee can also give $1,000 to that candidate. Even though it's Geo Group's money, and technically the law says an entity can only give $1,000 donation, you created a separate entity, $1,000. So now Geo Group has given this guy $2,000. Well, let's say Geo Group decides, I want to give this guy $20,000. So they establish 20 PCs, and they give that guy $20,000 checks. That is not illegal. That is fine. You can do that. Not only that, PCs can, in Florida, spend on behalf of candidates an unlimited amount of money. So let's say Geo Group really wants this guy to get elected, and the hot issue in his district is, let's say it's my district, it's affordable housing, and they really want to get one of my opponents elected, which as far as I know is not true. But let's say they did, they could send out a bunch of mailers and do a bunch of TV ads about how great my opponent is on this issue. Oh my God, this guy is going to build affordable housing for everyone. He's going to solve traffic. And they could spend an unlimited amount of money, $50,000, $100,000 on mailers, TV ads, radio ads, to help get that person elected. And literally corporations in the state of Florida do this. Yesterday we were talking about campaign finance with some of you, and I was running through some numbers and stuff, but you can see in the state house, there are literally people who got elected having raised, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 as individuals, right? It's not a lot of money when you're a multi-billion-dollar company, but imagine doubling that through a PC. So I think one of the ways in which we do that And restrict that is essentially say a company can only have one political committee. You know, you cannot create multiple political committees. You know, because of Citizens United, it's pretty, and Citizens United, which is a federal Supreme Court case that basically said spending is crazy. Corporations can spend whatever they want on campaigns. Corporations and individuals can spend whatever they want on campaigns. It's kind of difficult, but you know, pushing for that. Ultimately, what I would like to see is a system of public financing of campaigns. They had this in Arizona for a time. It was great. It was actually paid for by speeding tickets. So they put like a $15 surcharge on all speeding tickets, and it went to a trust fund. And then candidates would have to raise I guess it depends on the size of your race, but like if you're running for governor, I think it was $5,000 $5 contributions, right? So you have to raise $5 from at least 5,000 voters in order to qualify, right? To appear on the ballot, just to show that you have support from people. Just $5, no other money. And then you would get matching funds from this trust fund based on the number of voters. So if you're running statewide, you get this much money. If you're running for state house, you get this little bit of money, whatever. And Janet Napolitano, who was the governor, was a huge, huge beneficiary of that and was a Democrat, and she got elected. The Republicans still managed to win. They controlled the legislature during that time, but it was a clean elections. They called it the Clean Elections Amendment. It was done via a constitutional amendment in Arizona, and it was a great program. Of course, the program is gone now because once Janet Napolitano left to serve in the Obama administration, Jan Brewer became governor and worked with the Republican legislature to get rid of it, and so it's gone now. But for a long time, for a decade, it was truly the model of public financing and of clean elections. You know, you still wouldn't be able to get rid of the PC portion as much, but you could do other ways to limit PCs, to limit at least their influence, to make it very clear. You can do rules regarding disclaimers, making sure that people know. One thing that's been proposed that has failed, but that could be brought up is, you know, making sure that the primary funder of the political committee is listed in the disclaimer. So instead of it just saying, you know, this is a paid political ad paid for by Floridians for Freedom, it would be like, this is a paid political ad paid for by Floridians for Freedom, which is primarily funded by GOP. So extending the disclaimer for PC so people know where that money's coming from and you can't hide it. On the Department of State website, you can look up PCs, political committees. There are affiliated political committees. There are all sorts of political committees out there. And I'm happy that I am not a special interest driven person. I have been fortunate enough to work very hard with my family and my friends and my network to have raised $42,000 from over 500 individual contributions. I want to thank everybody that's donated. My average donation is about $82, which is great. And it's definitely one of the lowest. You can look up some reports, especially of incumbents, and it's, you know, $100,000 checks from all sorts of industry people. And it's just a process, and it's a process we need to reform, and public financing is at least one way in which we could do that until we get a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, which I also 100% support. So thank you. Has anybody been on the Facebook, see if there are any questions? Let me see, a bunch of people joined, thanks for coming. No, there are not any questions. All right, cool. So I guess that's it. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Anything else they want to add before we say goodbye to all the great people? No? Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Looking forward to seeing you all or talking to you all soon. And if anybody wants to help out on the Barrio campaign, we phone bank every day starting at 1. But if that doesn't work with your schedule, just let me know and I'll make sure that to get you a list of voters to call. This is how we win grassroots, one-on-one voter interactions. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you team for being here. You all are awesome. Keep up the great work. Enjoy your weekend. And I'll talk to y'all on Monday. Bye everybody.
See you soon.